Correct
Okay,
answers
hello.
are worth
So today,
$2,000. If you
if we
buzz
can
in with
already
the wrong
tell,
answer,
I'm gonna play
the other
some.
team can discuss and steal for $1,000. Everybody understand the rules?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let's get started.
On the
Here
very
are
center
the
of the
first pair of photos.
Oh.
Buzz. One's Buzz Aldrin and the other one's Buzz Lightyear.
Buzz?
Correct. Buzz Lightyear and Buzz Aldrin.
Press space.
Here are two
Okay,
more.
press space. Xena hugs. Pretty good. That's what the thing.
Incorrect. Xavier.
Daniel?
Daniel, correct.
Oh, of course that's Daniel Fire!
Here are two more.
Ben.
Continuing.
Ben Affleck?
Yes, KD.
Ben.
Correct.
And Big Ben.
Affleck and Big Ben. Very good. Okay, two more.
Fox.
Yes, correct, James.
Yeah.
Fox. Betty Fox and Red Fox. Here are two more.
Okay.
Hey.
Yeah.
Anybody?
Oh. Got it.
That is incorrect. Chuck, Xavier, any idea?
Kendall?
That is incorrect. It's Anna. Anna Kendrick and Anna Wintour. Let's take a look at two more. Yes, Chuck.
Ryan.
What?
That is incorrect. Aaliyah and JD
I am
can
Xena
discuss and steal.
Press space. I am Xena hugs. Continue. Good.
Two in the. Okay. Wizard.
No, that is incorrect. It is
Wiz.
Wiz, as in Wiz Khalifa, and the movie The Wiz. Now it all makes sense.
It does.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
there
Chuck
we
is
go.
like, of course, The Wiz.
Oh,
Okay.
I just lit a hole in
Whoa.
That means I don't have to do that.
What?
I got two more.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh.
JD.
John.
Kennedy.
No.
John.
John. Correct. Very good. John Cena. Okay. 3 pairs left.
Don't have a clue.
Xavier.
Billy.
Nice.
Billy. Billy Eilish and Billy Joel. Very good. 2 pairs left. Here we go.
Oh. Aston?
Xavier.
It's okay. Two.
Gomez.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, of course, he is in his Gomez Adams outfit.
I'm trying to type super fast.
Reynolds?
Xavier.
Ryan?
Ryan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's Ryan Kaji and Ryan Reynolds.
You can
That was the
talk
last
for the
question.
time.
So let's take a look at the final score. Xavier and Chuck.
That's why it worked.
$1,250. Aaliyah and JD, you did amazing. You did so well. So close. Thank you for being such great contestants. Great contestants. Xavier and Chuck, congratulations.
We're just gonna do this on video, right?
Right, when we come back, we've got a very special bonus prize we won in a very special way. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Coming up next, our special bonus round.
This is the youngest member
that's
of
what
your
I
team,
think.
Addison. Do you like prizes? Yeah, I've seen them. Oh, too much.
Wake up the beat, because our winners will be bringing out a ton to choose tonight's grand prize.
All of your toddler dreams can come true. Will you pick a new car? Or take me to the prize that you want? Have you decided?
Yay!
You gotta touch it.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
Exercise 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Generation Gap. I'm just getting an exam by the youngest member of Chuck and Xavier's family. Hi guys. Hi, congratulations. Once again, you are our big winners tonight. We are thrilled for you. I really cannot believe how much Chuck and Xavier knew about each other's generations. Can you believe it? Yeah. Yeah, me too. We're looking for Spider-Man in my ears and in my mouth, in case anybody at home is wondering what we're doing. Before we go, there's one more surprise, okay? We have a very special guest here. This is the youngest member of your team. This is Addison. Hi, Addison.
Yeah.
Hi. Addison loves Spider-Man, and we are searching for him everywhere. So if anybody finds him, let us know, okay? All right. Addison, do you like prizes?
Yeah.
Yeah? How much?
Too much.
Oh, too much, yes. On Generation Gap, we have the easiest bonus round in game show history. I'm going to show you 2 prizes better than that flashlight. I swear, better than this flashlight. Can you flash your light over there? See that magic wall? Now that magic wall is going to open up. And whatever is behind that screen, you get to pick the prize that you want. So it's time to play Toddler's Choice. Okay, let's get down to business. Addison, are you ready to make a choice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, watch. Let's shine your flashlight on the magic wall. And we're going to say, open sesame.
Addison, will you pick a new car? Or a Minnie Mouse flower-powered 4x4? Yes, Addison, you and your family can drive around town in a brand new 2022 Ford Escape SE with 6-speed automatic transmission and a striking Oxford white exterior. Or go four-wheeling with Minnie.
Did she
Polka dots and flowers and pink. Perfect for the sidewalk, backyard, or driveway. Addison, which will it be to make all your toddler dreams come true?
You want to go pick the one? You want to go pick a prize? You want me to go with you?
Yeah.
Okay, take my hand and take me to the prize that you want. Okay? Let's pick the prize that you want, okay? Big step, big step. You're going to pick the prize that you want? Which one do you want? You have to choose. Which one do you want to choose?
I want to.
Which one? You can't have both. We can only have one.
You have one?
Have you decided?
Yeah.
That's the one?
Yeah. I need a
You want the Minnie Mouse.
The
Okay.
Minnie Mouse crowd, yeah.
Yeah, flashback later. Well done. Good job, Addison. Let's hear for Addison. Good job. Chuck, I'm assuming you would have chosen the same way. Yeah. I'll bet you Addison will let you all take turns riding it, right? You'll let them take turns riding it. Won't you share?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being such an incredible family. Thank you, Addison. Really appreciate having you here. I'd like to thank all of our guests tonight, Aaliyah and JD, our mystery celebrity Miranda Sings, of course, my dad, Joe. We'll see you next time on Generation Gap. You did so great. You did a great job.
Jimmy Kimmel. No wonder. No wonder the cookies.
Congratulations.
She picked the Minnie?
She was very
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I want to ask both.
So far, there's
1, 2.
0 to
Great job.
however many kids it's in it already. 4.
You're divine.
Three,
Thank
4.
you. Nice to meet you as well. Yeah.
This is 4.
It's really nice to meet you. Really nice to meet you. Can I get a 5? Can I get a 5? Yeah.
I see you.
Look at that.
Final straw.
Oh, there you go. Here, Mom.
You can pick because Liz is chit-chatting here.
Liz's chit-chatting.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna go inside the house and see for 2 days. Let's see. Is tomorrow.
What?
Just showing her around.
Oh.
It's day 90 and they have to go out now. Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, definitely gotta do this.
Go for it, Nate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that.
Josh!
The Ashley gang robbed more than 40 banks while Dillinger only robbed 24. How much money did they get away with over the course of this crime spree? In today's money, millions. He couldn't put his proceeds in the bank. So, do you know where it is? For almost 100 years now, people have been digging holes trying to find this. Guys, come here.
Oh my God. Shut up. No, my heart is beating.
This is what we've been looking for. Are you kidding me? Treasure. There you go. This place is like a gold mine. This is insane.
Oh, sweet. I got food now.
Most gangsters are
I
associated with
definitely
big
gotta give
cities.
some food to
Al
these
Capone is
guys.
synonymous with Chicago. New York had Lucky Luciano. And LA, Mickey Cone.
Yeah.
But unless you're from Florida, well, you've probably never heard of
I
John
think you guys are
Ashley.
hungry.
His story is like
Yeah.
something out of the movies, except it's all real.
Right.
He was known as the King of the
Yes,
Everglades
indeed.
and led a
Right.
vicious gang that terrorized the Sunshine State from 1914 to 1924. Back then, Florida was an unair-conditioned, vast, and lawless frontier, where the Ashley gang went on a notorious decade-long crime spree of bank robbery, bootlegging, piracy, and murder. Their criminal enterprises netted a fortune, and reports of millions in hidden Ashley loot have swirled for a century. Now, research for a new museum exhibit on the gang has turned up incredible new clues, and treasure hunters are finally closing in. One has unearthed a lost document that points to a real-life treasure island that might contain actual buried loot, while a historian claims to have located an entire lost town and traces of the Ashley gang's hideout. We're on a hunt for truth and treasure, so put down the golf clubs and set aside your bingo card and get ready for an expedition to an unknown Florida from a century ago, where the only way to retire was with a bullet. My name is Josh Gates. Hello! Explorer. Adventurer. Amazing! And a guy who ends up in some very strange situations. I'm excited. With a degree in archaeology and a passion for the unexplained, I travel to the ends of the earth, investigating the greatest legends in history. Okay, let's punch it. This is Expedition Unknown. We begin our journey in Miami, the Magic City. No matter how hot it gets, sooner or later, there's a cool breeze coming in. Okay, so this episode is about bank robbers in the 20s and not drug cops in the 80s. But come on, Miami Vice is a classic. Plus, turquoise is really my color. All right, down to business. The heart of our story actually takes place about 100 miles north of Miami in the quaint town of Stuart. Along with classic Florida beachside vibes, this town is literally calling out to me about the Ashley Gang.
John Ashley grew up in the Everglades. Those who knew him said he wasn't all that bad. Those he murdered might just disagree with that.
Turns out people here are really into the Ashley Gang. This band, they're called the Ashley Gang. And they're singing about, who else? The Ashley Gang.
Unofficially. Ashley Gang went down. They went out looking for trouble. Trouble's what they found. Sheriff Baker made a promise before they laid him in the ground. You see the Ashley Gang go down.
Thanks. Even the beer here is named after the Ashley Gang. And I'll give you one guess what the name of the bartender is.
My name's Susie.
It's Ashley.
It's definitely Susie.
Okay, nice try, Ashley.
Yes, I just took like 5 minutes out of my time to the entire thing.
In addition to bands and beer, Stuart, Florida is also home to a new exhibit dedicated to the Ashley Gang. My education about the man known as the King of the Everglades begins here at the Elliott Museum. Founded in 1961, this terrific and eclectic collection celebrates the spirit of invention, along with art and Florida history. Amidst the miles of memorabilia, I find CEO Rob Steele. Rob?
Josh, welcome to the Elliott Museum.
Nice to meet you.
Thrilled to have you here.
I'm thrilled to be here. This place is amazing.
It's eclectic. You never know what's around the next corner.
Well, that kind of brings me to my first question, I guess, which is the place is so diverse. You've got these awesome cars, Americana, baseball collection, and now a new exhibit on a group of notorious criminals.
Beloved notorious criminals, the Ashley Gang.
Right. The Ashley Gang is not, I would say, a household name.
They're really not. The John Dillingers carry more notoriety, but the Ashley Gang robbed more than 40 banks while Dillinger only robbed 24. Wow. In the course of their work, it was impressive. It's a story that is waiting to be told that everyone should know.
At the center of this gang is John Ashley.
No, when did this cousin start?
When does John's criminal career kick off?
In his early 20s, John Ashley is in the Everglades, and he has a partner who's a Seminole Indian named DeSoto Tiger. They would routinely take a canoe and set trap lines to catch otters and sell the pelts for cash to the nearby trading post.
Get on to the island.
DeSoto Tiger
Okay.
ends up shot dead and his body floating in the
So
river.
wait a few minutes.
Not long after, John Ashley sells a tall stack of otter pelts with Seminole markings at a trading post in Miami. Enter Palm Beach Sheriff George Baker, whose pursuit of the Ashleys will become a family obsession, carried on by his son, Sheriff Bob Baker. With ties to the KKK, Sheriff Bob's participation ensures there are no good guys in the story of the Ashley Gang. In response to the murder of DeSoto Tiger, a detail of deputies are sent to arrest John Ashley. And how does that go?
Not altogether well.
Wait.
They're met with the
grotto
rifles of
over
the
here.
Ashley family. And John notoriously sent a message to the sheriff saying, "Don't send any more chicken-hearted men with rifles. They're liable to get hurt."
Wow. At 19 years old.
At 19 years old, he stood toe-to-toe against the sheriff, and that was the beginning of a feud that lasted till the end of John's life between Sheriff Baker and John Ashley.
Wow. As the murder case attracts more attention and controversy, John Ashley eventually surrenders himself to authorities, only to then break out of jail. Once a fugitive, John forms a gang of outlaws, joined by his brothers and occasional other partners in crime. This gang that he forms, this is largely a family affair, right?
4 brothers and a nephew, along with John and his father.
The first few scores are a little bumpy, proving that even a life of crime has a learning curve. First thing that they knocked over as a gang was a train, right?
Attempted train robbery. It didn't go exactly according to plan. The teller windows from the Bank of Stuart, which was their first successful robbery as a gang,
These are the actual windows from the bank.
Those are the windows.
Wow. So how much did they get away with in that robbery?
$5,000 was their take.
Not bad for a day's work.
Not bad when you consider the fact that that's $140,000 in today's dollars.
Oh, that's a very good day's work. It turns out I should be robbing banks.
You might want to reconsider a career change when you hear how the getaway went.
Oh, they don't get away scot-free?
One of the gang members had a misfire of his firearm, and the bullet passed through John Ashley's jaw, lodged in his skull, and caused his eye to be removed.
Wow. So that's why we always see him with that eye patch.
And an eye patch and a glass eye.
Now, every good story needs a little romance, and John Ashley's is no exception. And there's also Bonnie to his plot, right?
Absolutely. Laura Up the Grove is devoted.
Sorry, what now?
Laura Up the Grove.
So this is a family program. Her name is Up the Grove?
Up the Grove.
And she wasn't just a hanger-on here, right?
Not at all. She was a full partner in crime.
Laura earned her way into the gang with her solid marksmanship and cunning criminal mind. She cased potential robbery spots, oftentimes planned the heist, and even drove the getaway car. In short, she became a key player.
She was a stalwart member of the gang. There was nothing they couldn't ask her to do.
With a gunslinging love interest now added to the team, John and the gang embark on a 10-year crime spree that is simply epic. Along with daring bank robberies, the gang become major moonshiners in the swamps, producing and selling illegal hooch, and even engaging in piracy off the Florida coast. As a criminal enterprise, the Ashley gang is bold and very diversified. And what's he doing with all this money? He's like a swamp guy, right? So, is he living large?
John Ashley was actually reinvesting in the community. There are lots of oral histories from people that were directly affected by his generosity.
Like Jesse James, Dillinger, and other criminal anti-heroes, John Ashley has gained a folkloric reputation as a kind of Robin Hood, sometimes called the Swamp Bandit. John's enterprises bring some infrastructure and money to an otherwise undeveloped and impoverished region.
And he had a lot of people on the salary, too, to run all these enterprises.
But other locals, like people in Stewart whose money was in the bank John robbed, see him for what he was, a crook. And his spree eventually comes to an end, the culmination of his long grudge with Sheriff Baker. On November 1st, 1924, Baker's deputies are part of a trap set to capture John Ashley and 3 of his men as they travel north to Jacksonville. In the aftermath, John and his associates are shot dead. Afterward, John Ashley's glass eye is plucked out of its socket and delivered to Sheriff Baker, a twisted trophy to mark the end of their bitter feud. Oh my word.
Pretty amazing, staring back at you.
Literally staring back at me. This is his actual glass eye.
Correct.
It's actually kind of hard to look at because suddenly it actually seems like this larger-than-life character is looking back at us.
The sheriff intended to use it to make a keychain.
Okay, it's a good way to keep an eye out for your car keys. I'm going to give this back to you.
Thank you. Back in the case.
I get the Purell. But let's keep an eye on the prize and stay focused on the potential treasure. How much money did they get away with over the course of this crime spree?
In today's money, millions.
Millions. Okay, so I take it the money wasn't recovered at the time.
No, for almost 100 years now, people have been digging holes in Martin County trying to find it.
And what do you think? Do you think that that treasure's still out there?
If that amount of money ever saw the light of day, we'd be aware of it.
Just sort of vanished.
Absolutely.
Well, now we just got to find it.
It's a tall task.
Somebody's got to do it. Fortunately, several investigators are hot on the case. One is author Patrick Mesmer, who's written 3 books on the Ashley gang and is now going after their treasure in the swamps. I head to a nearby dock to meet him. Patrick, how are you?
Hey, Josh. Good meeting you.
Nice to meet you too, man. Beautiful day.
Oh, it's an awesome day.
Is it a beautiful day for finding treasure?
Every day's a good day for finding treasure.
I like that attitude. Okay, Ashley gang. Is there any truth to the idea that there's Ashley gang treasure out there?
I believe there is.
Really?
Because I've studied a lot about that period of history in this area.
Right. Patrick's research has turned up information about a largely forgotten Ashley gang moonshining site, a place where John may have stashed the gang's loot. And I guess more importantly, do you happen to know where to find it?
I have a pretty good idea of where it is, but it's not where you would think.
Is it in the middle of a marina?
No, it's not here, but we need to leave from here to get where we need to go.
All right, so which one of these yachts is yours?
Yacht? Who needs a yacht?
I think everybody needs a yacht, don't they?
I've got something better and much faster.
What's better than a yacht? Evidently, everyone doesn't need a yacht.
Yes.
Besides, these little motorcycles are a lot of fun. And very fast.
If we were this close to
We're headed from
whatever
Stewart
kind of
to a
movie
tiny,
it
narrow patch
we're
of land
probably
in the
orbiting that
mangroves
thing.
called
Nothing's
Corson Island.
coming out of it.
Let's see what you got, Patrick. Patrick lets her rip, and I'm in hot pursuit. On a quest for some good old-fashioned Sunshine State treasure.
I'm all smiling because they're having fun on those things.
Can you get anything?
Okay, Josh, this is Corson Island.
Yes.
I found an old newspaper article from the 1920s that said that the Ashley Gang camp was here on this island.
I'm jet skiing in Florida with author turned treasure hunter Patrick Mesmer as we search for bank robber and bootlegger John Ashley's old hideout. He believes this area was a base for one of their major moonshining operations. This is impenetrable. That is, if we can actually get onto the island. Just all mangroves.
Hey, Josh, I think we can get in over here.
Go for it. Finally, a possible way in. We dock at a break in the mangroves. Okay, here we are. Let's go find some treasure.
Lots of tabbies.
So, what's the move here?
We have some metal detectors. I think what we're going to do is just check this little shallow area here. There's some sandy beaches around the island. We'll just kind of work our way along and see if anything pops up.
Okay, well, let's get after it. The gang's moonshining exploits peaked during Prohibition, the period between 1920 and 1933, when it was illegal to transport, buy, or sell alcohol within the United States. You get bull sharks in here?
A few.
Good.
Solar shield.
Remote, hidden, and near the coast, Patrick believes this area was a base for one of their major booze operations, as the gang took full advantage of Prohibition, building enough liquor stills to kick their side hustle into a large-scale production.
I definitely type how I talk.
Hey, Josh, I got a hit.
Let me see.
You always ignore the phone calls because
That's a hit for sure.
when I do try to compare things, I just
Certainly
never
smells like treasure.
There it is.
If they want something I haven't even discovered yet.
Copper pipe. Hey,
Stuff I didn't even know existed.
that's absolutely right. It's old copper, too.
Yep. That could be steel copper. What's that doing here?
Right?
I can think they're doing something.
Our first find elevates our spirits quite a bit. Now we press inland in hopes of uncovering even more.
Hey, Josh.
On the 100
Looks like we got an opening here.
Let's see where it goes.
No.
Wow. Oh, look at that. Found the interior.
See, this opens up in here.
Oh, wow, it really does. Look at that.
Yes. Building material.
Yeah.
So this area looks like it had buildings on it.
After getting a lay of the land, it doesn't take long for Patrick to surmise how this would have been an ideal area for a bootlegging operation.
That is a road.
It's a road.
It is a road.
Oh, look at that. So it's like an old abandoned trail that connects the camp out to the water. This looks like an old trail in here.
Yep. We got a bluff here.
Once the booze was made, it had to be moved.
100.
Patrick explains how Corset Island operated as a staging ground for the Ashleys to transport their product discreetly.
This would have been a great spot for the Ashley gang to have a tent. On the other side of that is the ocean.
This would have been a perfect departure point for trips to the Bahamas, just 50 miles away, where they could buy liquor legally and smuggle it back to the United States.
They would buy cases of booze. They would bring it back, unload it at a dock here at this site. A lot of times the profit margin on booze was 6 times what they paid for it. Wow. It's $70,000 or $80,000 for one trip. Imagine if you did 5 trips a week. They actually had a lock on the rum running trade for several years, where no one could do it except them.
But as lucrative as this was, the Ashley gang wanted even more.
They weren't just
Yes,
bootleggers,
she
they were
wanted to,
also
like, vent
pirates.
a little,
They would attack
and
other
I was
rum runners.
making her laugh, and Mike
Literal
comes
pirates.
out, and he's
These
all
guys
like,
are
can you
crazy.
like not
Yeah.
do that?
How
And
much
like,
money are we
be away
talking
from the
about?
window, we're trying to
And
lay
where is that money?
Underneath our
and hear
feet.
you all happy, because I'm not. Are you fucking
Convinced
kidding?
we have
And
the
I
right
did her
spot,
ear, and I'm like,
Patrick and I
really,
get to
dude?
work.
Like, dude, bro, are you really saying that right now? This is like, no, man.
Hey Josh, I got a hit.
Talk to her like that, but she's on the phone with her sisters.
Here? Yep. Right in that area right there.
So,
Patrick,
this was
just dive
just
in there and get
outside
that
of the hotel room, trying to vent.
All right.
And,
Patrick,
no, she had to go.
remember, kids, treasure hunting is dangerous business.
Right.
And it's hard
Just
as
ask my
hell.
camera operator.
So, yeah. So, we're kind of have venting quietly. And
What
discussing
is
stuff,
happening?
and I don't want
You all
to
right?
speak over the show because I know it was kind of loud.
Crap. A big
Doing
crap?
type and everything and everything.
Sure, there's a joke here to be
He
made
comes
about
out
my cameraman
and,
catching
you know,
crabs.
because I'm trying
But
to
I'm
make her
above
laugh.
that.
You know,
I thought an
let
alligator
her
had your legs. Ugh.
relax a little, right?
Okay, where were we?
Laughter is the best medicine. She's
Right.
sick. She's sad and he's all fucking pissed. He comes out
Here we
and
go.
says, you need to like keep it down
I got
or
it.
away from the window or something because I don't need to be hearing you all happy next to the window when you know I'm not. You see, now I don't know what the fuck is going on with this life.
Beer tab for a second, but
I
it's
told
not.
Liz, I was like, Austin, tell
This
us
is fucking
your
lamp.
friend.
I think that's the wick turner on oil lamp.
And he's all
A
proud of the
really
fact that he's
old oil
seen me
lamp.
on my
Wow.
wall.
Let's see, it's stamped. It says
You didn't need
Dietz
to make
Company.
He said
A
it's
trusty
probably the best moment you've ever
1920s
seen.
Dietz oil lamp would have been the
No,
perfect
no.
way for the Ashley gang to illuminate their bootlegging activities in the stealth of night. That is so
Well, I
cool.
guess Samantha went to the ER.
Oh, okay.
Gold coin, gold coin. Come on, gold coin. Come on.
Is she okay?
Or whatever this is. What do you think?
Some kind of armature.
Give her a rest.
Whatever it is, it's not treasure. Keep moving. We continue to search and to dig. And dig.
No, she
How about
went to
Patrick?
the ER.
How's it going, Patrick?
I'm determined.
Yeah, that's how I started. Now I'm determined.
Don't you complaining.
After a few hours of investigating, it feels like we need a new tactic. Alright, so, promising spot for
Get it
sure.
off and there
Couple
you
cool ones.
go.
No treasure.
No, but I'll tell you what. I brought a couple of special tools that I think might give us an edge.
Alright, what do you got?
Magnets.
Magnets. Magnet fishing, as the pros call it, is actually a surprisingly effective way to recover items underwater. And it's also a hell of an upper body workout.
Okay, Josh. This magnet has 3,600 pounds of pull.
I take it that's strong.
It's very strong.
Okay.
It won't pick up gold or silver, but sometimes those items get concreted in with other things, like
Sure.
a case
So
or a
I
box.
just told her,
After
100
100 years of
they did
storms
that
and
to me
erosion,
too.
anything the Ashleys may have buried on Corset Island is just as likely to be bogged down in the water's edge as it is in the ground.
I got Starlight fucking
Now, is
face in
there a
their damn
specific technique
face.
to this?
You take the magnet,
Bitch at me some
throw
more.
it in the water.
This shit's
Run
all
that
over your
by me one more
chest and
time.
stuff.
You take the magnet, and you throw it in the
You
water.
can cover
I got it
that.
now.
Yeah, okay.
I had to peel them puppies off
That's a good
last
one.
time.
Still
I
feeling good
didn't
about
have
this
time
one.
to stay on there longer than
We
an
cast
hour
out into the
because
water
I didn't
again
know they were
and
there.
again, until finally Patrick feels a little added resistance on his line.
Oh, I got something.
What do you got? Come on. It's shiny. What is that?
It's a knife. It's a steak knife.
Alright, well, is that a weapon from the Ashley gang?
I don't think so.
John Ashley was known for holding up banks, not steakhouses. You get 3 more of those, we got a set. Oftentimes, success relies upon perseverance. With magnet fishing, that's even more so. There's worse ways to spend an afternoon. We continue to toss our magnets into the water
Hey, I
in the
would
hopes
do
we
it,
can
that would
drag
be
in
fun.
some of that sweet
That's
Ashley
almost
Gang
like
treasure.
salmon fishing.
Old nail. Unfortunately, hours later, we have little to show for it but some sore shoulders.
Got a fish hook.
Oh.
What's it going to take to find Ashley Gang treasure out here, you think?
I think it's going to take dedication and hard work just like we've been doing today. Florida has 1,300 miles of coastline, and for hundreds of years it's been all about smuggling and piracy all along our coast. And a lot of that story is still buried.
Right, and as we see over and over again, even today, that history keeps coming back to the surface.
Yes, it does.
All right, well, we got to keep looking. We should probably go make sure those jet skis are still there.
I agree.
Let's go. Patrick and I jet back towards civilization, having explored what might be one of the Ashley Gang's bases of operation. But there's another critical location associated with the gang that might yield even more. Back in the town of Stewart, I'm following in the gang's footsteps to see where they lead and where they end. This restaurant over here used to be the old Bank of Stewart.
the heck?
It's where
How's it
John
got
Ashley lost his eye, and in fact, the gang robbed this place not
no.
once, but twice. By the second time, they were so recognizable that they couldn't just walk in unnoticed. So, John's nephew slipped in by wearing a dress. As for John, he found himself in and out of prison, escaping for the third time in 1923. By this time, the Ashley Gang kicks their robberies into high gear, operating out of a homestead and moonshining headquarters deep in the swamp, where many believe their ill-gotten treasure was ultimately buried. The only problem? The town was torched to the ground and then lost to history. But now, two experts believe they've found it.
There's one of those things for them.
I'm on the trail of the notorious bandit and moonshiner John Ashley. Now, Florida historians Steve Carr and Chessie Ricca believe they relocated a lost town that might contain the lost treasure of the notorious gangster. So, let's start with a little orientation. Where are we?
Well, you're standing in the town of Fruita.
For the town?
The town of Fruita.
The ghost town of Fruita.
I don't even see a ghost town. Like, where is it?
Well, you gotta look hard. It's
Okay.
here.
So there was a town here. And when was this town in existence?
Roughly 1910 through 1912, it began its roots homesteaded by Joe Ashley, the father of the notorious bandit John Ashley. John Ashley actually called this home, and this was his base of operation.
And their home was where?
It was right here where you're standing.
Like right here, right here?
This is the Ashley homestead. You're standing on top of it.
If Steve is right, this is the location of one of the most dramatic and bloody events in the gang's history. Remember Sheriff Bob Baker, the one who would eventually use John's glass
Mike
eye
is
as a
sick.
keychain? Well, having had quite enough of the Ashley Gang's exploits, Baker orders a large group of heavily armed deputies to raid the Ashley homestead in the pre-dawn hours of January 9th,
Right here.
1924.
His big mouth got too big and karma hit him. He got sick and he being a baby.
A massive shootout ensues. And while John escapes, the sheriff's men burn the Ashley home and their moonshining operation into oblivion.
You know those treasure pots from
That's ceramics from the, probably from the Ashley homestead, from the house. This place was burned to the ground. The dishes inside it, of course, were crushed. There's archaeological evidence that the house existed and was here.
Look at that, a dinner plate that might have been in the Ashley home.
John actually made it eating off of that plate.
How crazy is that? This famous raid that went down, that was supposed to have taken place near one of the big stills that were moonshining, right?
So in one fell swoop, the idea was to bring enough deputies here. And Josh, they didn't come with warrants. They came
I'm
here
seeing a golden slime over here
to take
once.
this place out. Florida is gone. It was destroyed in one night.
The main target of the raid was the gang's whiskey stills. Steve and Chessie not only believe they found that area, they think the Ashley treasure could still be buried there.
Oh, where are you?
So let's talk about this treasure, right? There are these rumors, these stories that it might have been hidden out near this still site. Do we know where this raid took place? Actual kind of flashpoint out here?
Yes, we do. We're lucky to have photographs of where the site was. And I think with 99% certainty, Josh, I'm putting you on that whiskey still site, which was the whole point of the raid.
Can we see it?
You ready to go?
Please.
No.
Now, Josh, I want you to keep an eye out for these cactuses here.
Yeah.
Also, there's one other thing you gotta keep an eye out for. You got pygmy rattlesnakes.
What the hell's a pygmy rattlesnake?
It's like a rattlesnake, but small, and it has no rattle.
The rattle's the one way you know they're there.
Welcome to Florida.
This state is crazy. All right, come on. Keeping an ever-watchful eye out for non-rattling snakes and whatever other wildlife Florida has in store for us. We finally arrive at a clearing, which Steve believes was at the center of the police raid.
So, Josh, where we're standing, this was that major still site.
The big whiskey still was right here.
Right here in front of you. Now, there's an old photograph that showed the sheriff deputies who raided this place in 1924.
Yes, I've seen that. They're all lined up, right, in front of the building.
Correct. And that building
Oh,
was right there.
And was that building the still?
It was the still house. It was the operation during Prohibition. They were producing over 100 gallons of whiskey a day.
Sorry, 100 gallons of whiskey a day?
I saw it jumping and like,
This was one of the most productive activities anywhere in the country.
So how do we know that still was right here?
I'm going to prove that to you. So, Josh, I got something I want you to see here. Ooh, look at this.
okay, we're not on
I think
it.
that's going to be part of the foundation stone for the still that we were talking about.
I mean, that is a cut stone for sure. Look at that.
It is.
What do you got?
Got some blue glass.
Blue glass. So what's blue glass doing out here?
Well, John Ashley's brother Bill produced his own brand of moonshine, and he put it in those blue bottles.
That's it right there,
That-
right? We have moonshiner's glass and a foundation stone in the middle of nowhere.
And we got a lot more over here to show you, too.
Wow. All right, well, let's go find it. Everything points to this being the location of the raid.
I gotta grab the whiskey bottle.
Look at that, whiskey bottle. If you find a full one, Chessie, let me know. If this is the spot, it makes sense that treasure could be buried here too. After all, the gang was making a lot of money here, and most of it has never
Maybe
been
it's
found.
10, right?
A lot of people believe that they could have been producing as much as
Any
$5,000
other
a day.
age-based
in
name?
revenue.
I don't remember.
That's a hell of a
That
lot of money
many
in
age
1920. Ashley had a penchant for swapping paper money out for gold. You couldn't put his proceeds in the bank. You had to hide it.
Yeah.
Well, it could also be a
If he's
girl.
producing
But I
$5,000 a
don't
day,
know
Josh, we could be
her
talking
age.
millions, if not billions of dollars in gold.
It's believed that John may have buried boxes of gold coins out here near their base of operations. Our mission? Look for the loot, but also see if we can find any remnants of the gang's presence, which would be historic. We point our noses to the ground and slowly start walking the site. Oh, I got metal. Steve. So what do you think?
Could be part of the stove.
As we scour the land, I can't help but feel goosebumps at the idea that John Ashley and his gang may have stood in this very place.
Hey guys, I think I got something cool over here.
Where? Look at that! Wow!
Hey guys, I think I got something cool over here.
We're in the swamps of Florida searching for traces of the Ashley gang and their treasure.
I think I got a bullet.
Wow! Now, we may have just uncovered a remnant from one of the bloodiest chapters in their history. Oh, big one! Look at that!
That is too cool.
That is...
10 hands and chickens. Definitely.
That's 12 gauge. Look at that.
Look, we got another one.
Two of them. Just literally laying there.
Josh, this speaks to the violent nature of the story.
When Sheriff Baker's men come to the homestead, they're not here to negotiate. They immediately open fire on the gang. In the mayhem, Joe Ashley, John's father, is shot and killed. Having witnessed his father's death, John immediately fires back in retaliation, killing Officer Fred Baker, cousin of Sheriff Baker. John's girlfriend, Laura, is also seriously injured, taking 3 wounds to the abdomen. John, however, miraculously escapes. And, like almost every other part of John Ashley's story, though, they don't kill him.
Yeah, he has kind of a sixth sense about these things. And while everybody was sleeping, John always seemed to have one eye open. Remember,
Well, that's all he had. It was right in front of me. It was right in front of me.
Now.
Just the idea that we may be holding the shells that were used to kill somebody up here.
absolutely. This was a life and death situation. This was one of the biggest battles in Palm Beach County history.
One of the reasons John survived is that he was sleeping in a campsite away from the main whiskey still and the Ashley home. This site must be close by, and there's been a long-standing local rumor that another whiskey still was there as well. We head deeper into the swamp to search, and Jessie almost immediately detects something.
Hey guys, I got a good mark over here.
What does it eat?
Could just be a piece of metal. See if they can.
Is that it? Scrap iron or something?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. It's just a thin piece of scrap metal.
Okay, well,
That's a good sign.
soon, even more metal comes out of the ground.
There's like a little nail here. It's got that rounded kind of edge.
This was attached to whatever the remainder of that is over there.
Like edge of a crate, maybe? Something was here. I don't know if it tells us that we're at this campsite, but
It tells you that man, at one point in time, was in fact right here.
that's a start. We'll take it. All right, let's get going. What might be the edge of a box handle is an intriguing sign. In fact, there are signs everywhere.
Hey Josh, I got something for you.
More scrap metal?
Well, I don't think so. This looks like an old trap.
Oh my
They were
word.
otter hunters.
Careful, that thing's not still loaded.
It is definitely a trap. We can take it off at that.
What are you pecking at?
Yeah, it's a trap.
It is a trap.
Animal trap. And what's cool about it is it's still got the chain stuck to it.
I don't want to break it, obviously, but the crazy thing is, look at that. You can
It's still moving.
You can still actually set this trap. All the pieces of it are here. All the things these guys are known for. The moonshining, the guns, the traps, the food. Like, we're finding all of these things that are so closely associated with these guys, too, right?
That's the beauty in archaeology, is it allows us to tell their story from what they left behind.
Hey guys, I think I got something cool over here. I think I found something crazy.
What?
It's ripped on the side like a coin, but it's thicker than a
Look
coin.
at the tabbies.
Thank you
Wait,
so much.
no.
Yeah.
Wait, I want one. I want one.
It's
Stop.
a silver dollar. It's actually it's $2 silver dollars.
Those are coins.
Oh my gosh!
Stuck together.
Are
Oh,
you
wait,
kidding me?
Treasure. There you go. Right there.
Look at that! These are 2-piece Liberty dollars, minted between 1921 and 1928, which puts us right on the money for the Ashley gang.
Thank you, sir.
These discoveries are strong indicators that we may be close to the camp and long-lost moonshine still, where John Ashley was sleeping the night of the raid.
Oh, wait, you eat meat.
Encouraged, we press our search into more unforgiving territory.
Josh, this is getting thick back here.
I mean, super overgrown.
This is the old Florida.
This is like prehistoric Florida.
If you were a pioneer back in early Florida, this is what you had to survive.
See the glass?
I'm not seeing much.
Hey Josh,
Yeah.
check this out. This is what we've been looking for.
This is your
I'm
look
gonna
at it.
sit till morning till day.
This is part of the still.
This is the forward tank for a
Get
skeleton.
out of here. That's insane.
Here.
Stretching.
Dude, that's unbelievable.
Take a look at this.
Is that room painted?
Yeah, well, no, it's a ceramic finish inside, which is important because in the moonshine still, you have to keep the mash perfectly clean. It couldn't mix with rust or anything else.
Guys, look. Sitting right here.
bottle literally right in front of you.
Right there.
That's insane. This whole site, I think, is just littered with this stuff.
Yeah.
This is now, I think, a significant place. This old still is a remarkable piece of American history. It's the very tool of the trade that the Ashley gang used to amass great wealth during the time of Prohibition. This place is like a gold mine. There's stuff everywhere. All right, everybody keep looking around. Everybody.
Got it, Josh.
This is insane. Believing we're now in the heart of John Ashley's camp, we immediately fan out around the still to see if anything else is here.
Getting a lot thicker in here.
Steve?
Yeah.
What the is this? Guys, come here. There's a huge hunk of metal here.
Wow.
What the hell is this? Life is a journey filled with crossroads and choices. But in Stuart, Florida, one of the more terrifying feats of civil engineering lies here at an intersection affectionately called Confusion Corner.
Doesn't seem so confusing.
Sorry.
Guess I go here and it comes here. Oh, good lord.
8 streets, a traffic circle, and a train all meet in one jumbled junction. What could possibly go wrong?
Look, kids, big fan.
Who designed this? So the next time your life is at a crossroads, no matter how bad you think it is, it could always be worse. Oh, and merge carefully. Go ahead. Go ahead. We got it. Sweet. Lord above. Alive. Somebody's got to fix that.
This might be.
Guys, come here. There's a huge hunk of metal here.
Wow.
What the hell is this? Having found a long-forgotten whiskey still, we're scouring the location of a lost campsite belonging to the notorious John Ashley.
Oh my lord.
And we've just made another find. Wait, is this actually a car? Whatever it is, it's big.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
That's.
That answers your question.
It's a car.
That's
Why
a
is there a car in the middle of the forest?
Dropped into
You got a
your
tree growing through the center.
John would have had a vehicle out at this camp to move moonshine
Why
into
are
town
purposely
and across the state.
There's that headlight.
Look how tinny these.
Look at that.
That's ancient.
Old car.
1920s, definitely.
Wait, this could be John Ashley's car. That's insane.
Yeah, look at this, Josh. This kind of looks like maybe the grill or where a radiator could be. It's a lot of metal on
Yeah,
this.
there's a lot of metal.
This is a fender. I'm thinking it might be a truck. Because the trucks from the 20s had the door cut out. Can you see how it follows like a cut out?
For sure, right here.
So I think this is an old truck, like an old Model T.
Based on the pieces we found, Steve believes this could be a Ford Model TT, which debuted in 1917 and fits the timeline of John Ashley. This is truly a remarkable discovery.
This changes everything, Josh. In my mind, I can almost see the whiskey camp right here. Boiling whiskey over here. The truck
where the
loaded up
lab
whiskey
was.
when it's ready to go. We have trails running back
I'll
here.
find
Who
it
knows
some-
where? We're
someday.
finding bottles that clearly date to the period.
It's
I mean,
very
what more
rare
could you
to
ask?
play this game.
This is really a treasure.
To me, this is treasure.
I'll play it
Finding
again because
an
I'm not
antique
going
truck
to
in the middle of the Everglades. Clearly, nobody has been here before us. I see no
Actually,
signs of
that's okay.
modern, anything modern.
Not a beer can, not anything.
We are just rediscovering
Read
the
everything
whiskey
that
camp
eats it.
of the Ashley gang.
This is treasure. This
Excuse
is
me?
real treasure.
To an archaeologist, this is a lifetime of work.
I mean, this is a whole
Uncovering
camp here.
An archaeologist could work out here for years.
This is so awesome. As for John Ashley himself, he escapes the raid, but not the long arm of the law. In November of 24, fed up and embarrassed by John Ashley's exploits, Sheriff Baker receives a tip that the Ashleys will be traveling north on the Dixie Highway. The police place a chain across the road, stopping the car and handcuffing the gang. According to one of the deputies, John Ashley makes a sudden move. giving the officers no choice but to shoot all of the men. The gang, like this site, will eventually fall to ruin. Laura, it is said, lays low in Palm Beach County, operating a gas station until 1927, when she dies by poisoning, possibly having taken her own life. The so-called King of the Everglades finally receives his Florida retirement. Today, the Ashley family cemetery resides within the bounds of a private country club near the 18th hole of a beautiful golf course. Given John's crime-ridden past, it's a pretty decent lot. And while he's received a reputation as a beloved scoundrel, the fact is he was undoubtedly a ruthless criminal. Personally, I'm more intrigued by those who are trying to preserve the early history of this wild state and rediscover the gang that thrived in its humid swamps. Beneath the overgrown vines, we've unearthed historic finds that help to paint a fuller picture of the Ashley gang. I thank Steve and Chessie for the incredible adventure and wish them luck on future excavations. Oh, and of course, I remind them to call me if and when they ever find a missing box of Ashley treasure.
No, huh? It's just like spicy. It's like, no, man.
I don't think that's a huge pile of food. Eat food.
Limber, baby. I don't know, man. Somebody pointed against Tylenol.
I'm not very active.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I remember that. 10:15, the guy has been kidnapped.
Okay, you haven't.
Tonight, a high-profile kidnapping grips
Okay.
when the infant son of an aviation legend is snatched from his
So
crib
where bullets come from?
Speaking to you now from the press headquarters adjoining the Lindbergh page.
Alright, this used to be rock.
After a nationwide
Never
manhunt,
mind.
the supposed culprit is brought to justice. But did authorities get the right man?
Wait, how come
Circumstances,
these
there
are
are signs
blue?
that this could have been an inside job.
But
Now
oh
we'll
wait,
uncover
the
the top
original,
theory surrounding what's been called
those little
the
signs.
crime of the century.
How could this have succeeded without someone having inside knowledge?
There are at least 2 or more accomplices that never got any attention.
No!
Dr. Kleinman so heavily involved? Did he have something to do with this? Can new evidence finally reveal the truth behind this American tragedy?
The alleged confession said that
Bye-bye.
not Richard Hauptman, am the kidnapper of the Lindbergh baby.
Who really is responsible for the kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby?
Just I can always get a new one. Because, I know I'm pretty popular with this.
Hopewell, New Jersey, 1932.
Pink blobs.
For the past year, world-famous aviator Charles Lindbergh has called this area home.
So Lindbergh has been a major celebrity ever since he completed his first transatlantic solo flight in 1927. In the drizzly early morning of May 20th, 1927, the Spirit of St. Louis takes off from Roosevelt Field in Long
It's like
Island.
infinite pink
And
slime.
after 33 and a half hours of flying alone, Lindbergh lands at Lavoisier Field outside Paris. Does Lindbergh do something that no one else has ever done before? Absolutely. He flies across the Atlantic Ocean by himself, solo, on a flight pattern that takes him 2,000 miles farther than the last transatlantic flight. A flight, by the way, which had 2 aviators, not 1. Lindbergh's flight proved that aviation had a future
I'm not
for
gonna see how
passenger
many
transportation. This also earns Lindbergh
pink slimes I can
tons
fit
of
into one
accolades,
little
tons of
thing.
awards, everything from the Medal of Honor, the Flying Cross, the Congressional Gold Medal. But there's no way Lindbergh would have reached this level of fame and adulation without one thing: radio.
You have to understand, at the
Currently, I
time,
have
no
about
smartphones, no internet, no television. This is before almost any form of modern communication. Radio is revolutionizing the way the world connects. So when Lindbergh is making this record-breaking flight, this is the first time that an audience can actually follow along with an historic event in real time.
This is a moment of instantaneous information, not the delay
I'm gonna go get
that
some
could be a newsreel or a newspaper account or a book. This is happening in real time, and that's very impactful for people. After this flight, he comes back home. There's a ticker tape parade. Hundreds of thousands of people. He gets
So I
millions
think
of
put all these white
telegrams
parts in here.
congratulating him. Lindbergh is instantly internationally famous.
But before long, the intensity of this public adulation becomes overwhelming.
Lindbergh is badgered constantly by the press. Everybody wants a piece of him.
Charles Lindbergh and his wife decided
No,
they had
those
enough
guys are the
of being
worst
in this
ones.
crazy public eye, so they bought some land in Hopewell, New Jersey.
They purchase a remote 600-acre lot where they plan to build an estate that will be their primary home, along with their 20-month-old son, Charles Jr.
Construction on their new home begins in March of 1931, but the Lindberghs are just so anxious and so ready to leave New York that they decide to head out to the house before it's even completed, and they start staying there a few days a week. In addition to Charles and Charles Jr., they've got the nursemaid, Betty Gow, their butler, Ollie Watley, and his wife, Elsie, living in the house with them. They're a pretty tight-knit group. Lindbergh increasingly resents the intrusions on his private life. The purpose of the construction of the estate outside of Hopewell was to give the Lindberghs some
This will make
breathing
100
from the
pink
24/7
slimes.
press attention that the family is under.
But before the Lindberghs find their respite, on March 1st, 1932, the unthinkable happens.
So shortly before 10 o'clock, the nurse, Betty Gow, heads into the nursery to check on Charles Jr.
She is horrified to find out that the crib is empty. She runs to tell Lindbergh. He follows her back to Charles Jr.'s room, and he finds out that she's right. The baby is gone.
So much.
The house staff immediately begins searching the property.
They are combing the house
that's
high
like-
and low. And while they're searching, Charles Lindbergh comes across something that confirms his deepest,
700
darkest
slimes
fear.
in one
Near the
place.
window of his son's room, he finds an envelope. There's a problem with this particular
Can I
window.
turn
It's
the
warped,
pieces?
which means that it doesn't close properly. The latch doesn't actually catch. So
Oh,
this
wait.
is the only way that you could get into the house
Bye-bye.
without a key.
This was a second floor window. This wasn't one you could just walk up to the house and climb through.
Wait, and this thing
In the
happened.
envelope is a poorly written, misspelled note demanding $50,000 for the return of the baby. It's a ransom note. The
No.
note reads, "Dear sir, have $50,000 ready.
No.
$25,000 in $20 bills, $15,000 in $10 bills, and $10,000 in $5. After 2 to 4 days, we will inform you where to deliver the money.
Whoa.
For making anything public.
Ooh, isn't that a
when you
right
find the
variety?
The child is in good care."
At the bottom of the note, the kidnappers leave a cryptic signature.
They had an image at the bottom that was
She's
two
gonna go
interlocking
rock slime,
circles
tabby
with
slime.
squiggly lines, and then 3 punch holes. It's a very strange pattern.
So the author of the letter actually said
Firefly
this particular
slime.
symbol will
We're just
let
gonna
you
call
know
it that.
that
Because
this
it
is
has wings and it
authentic
glows.
correspondence from me and no one else.
As if this is some sort of secret code to verify
This
that
is
the letters
not
are genuine.
pens.
And that, rather chillingly, more letters may follow.
It was as if the kidnappers
What
were
the
saying,
heck?
this is just the beginning.
Okay then.
As they comb the property, Lindbergh and his butler Ollie find
That's water.
There are also some scraps of wood from a broken ladder underneath the window, and they also find a set of muddy footprints.
By 10:30 p.m., a small army of police officers arrive and begin investigating.
Police realize they have very little to go on. They've got no fingerprints. They've got no eyewitnesses.
And you're in the middle of nowhere, really, at a massive
Oh, wait,
estate.
no.
So, when it comes to this investigation, where would you want to start? On the inside.
We don't need
Of course.
any more tabby slimes.
It's only natural to start with those that
But
are
look at
closest
these
to the
more
crime.
kitty.
Based on the circumstances, there are signs that
No,
would indicate that this could have been an inside job.
Don't care
First
if I
off, the
get some
precision
chicken
of this
brushes.
kidnapping and how it went down is a bit suspect. It's as if the person or persons knew exactly where to go, but
Look at this little one over here a little bit.
based on the scene outside, the footprints, the wood from the broken ladder, it appears that whoever took Charles Jr. went to one window only, the window that led directly into the nursery. We also know that Charles and Anne were awake at the time of the kidnapping, so there's no way that there's going to be somebody outside of the property moving a ladder from window to window, trying to jimmy open every window before they find the correct one. They would have been hurt.
There's a dog. The dog doesn't bark.
There's
There's
a
a baby.
shooter at your
Baby's crying, but
face.
this baby did not cry. So there's a general sense that there must be someone who's familiar with the household has to be involved.
The nursery's condition is also suspicious.
The baby's blankets, after Charles Jr. is taken, they're not just left in the crib. They're actually folded very neatly and placed on a shelf nearby. Why would a stranger that's kidnapping Charles Lindbergh's baby even bother to do that? That seems more like a routine of somebody that's in the house that does this frequently.
Authorities figured
And I'm
that
nowhere near
the
done
kidnapper
collecting
had inside knowledge of the schedule.
Members are creatures of habit. They do not go to the house in the country all
Actually,
the
I am
time. Normally they're there on the weekend and they leave on Monday. But
I'm
Charles
gonna
Jr.
try-
got taken on March 1st, which was a Tuesday.
They stayed one extra day at the home because the baby had a cold, and so they thought that the country air, the fresh air, would be good for the baby.
And the question becomes, how would a random person know that?
So if you're looking at this as an inside job,
Excuse
your
me.
first three suspects should be obvious. The Lindbergh staff members, you've got Betty Gow, you've got the butler Ollie, and his wife, Elsie Watley. The Watleys have been with the Lindberghs all weekend long, so they pretty much have an alibi. Ollie was actually in bed, and Elsie was downstairs in the kitchen making lemonade.
But nursemaid Betty Gow has only arrived that
I'm
afternoon.
getting all this
Doesn't
food
she
in
have
here
time to plan a
so I
kidnapping?
can go collect the other
Place
food.
watching her immediately.
According to Betty's statement, on March 1st, Anne calls Betty and asks her to
Anything
come
for
to
this
the weekend estate,
small
and Betty
size
agrees,
here?
even though she had plans at the time with her boyfriend, Henry Red
I
Johnson.
also just
Betty
remembered
says
they
that
only
she
eat
called her
meat.
boyfriend to cancel her plans because she had to
getting
go to
that,
work.
and I don't know
Police
why.
question Johnson, and he
Because
backs
they
up his
have
girlfriend's
small
story.
multi-brain.
However, in Johnson's car, they do find a bottle of milk.
This bottle of milk was really suspicious to police. They wondered, is that there to feed a baby?
There are some theorists that suggest that when Betty Gow called her boyfriend to cancel the plans, that's not actually what she was doing. She was actually calling him to signal to him that, yes, he should kidnap the baby.
Apart from a bottle of milk, police have no evidence that implicates Johnson or Betty Gow.
Lindbergh intervenes to prevent the police from really interrogating and bearing down on the servants in his own household who he trusted without qualification.
And that meant that Betty Gow wasn't looked at any further. That line of inquiry goes cold, but then they find another.
When famed aviator Charles Lindbergh's infant son is kidnapped on March 1st, 1932, it creates an unprecedented media uproar.
It's a cliche nowadays to call something a crime of the century, but this really was. This was one of the biggest cases, not just in America, but in the world.
We have here a client which reads as follows.
News of the kidnapping leaks almost immediately, and journalists just flock to the Lindbergh estate. It's a madhouse. Of course, everybody wants to help. One of the people who wants to provide criminal expertise to this case is the notorious gangster Al Capone, who is currently residing in the Cook County Jail. He offers his criminal and gangster contact to help the police find the Lindbergh baby if they will just temporarily release him from prison. The police do not take Al Capone up on his offer.
That was indicative of just how widespread this story had gotten. It was reaching everybody.
Al Capone, sitting in a cell in Chicago, finds out about this news only 12 hours after it happens. Mind you, there is no internet during this time. But let's also remember, the ransom note specifically said, do not make this a public deal, do not get the police involved. Is all
Here, have some
immediate
water.
attention jeopardizing the life of the child?
The Lindberghs soon
How do you know
learned
it?
the answer to that question.
Oh yeah.
So on March
I still have
6th,
to empty out you
another
guys.
ransom note arrives.
And it follows the pattern of the first ransom note. You've got the same handwriting, you've got the same signature with the squiggly lines, and you've got the 3 holes, but the tone of this letter is much more threatening.
And it starts off by saying, "Dear sir, we've warned you not
You
to
can
make
barely even
anything public."
tell
Now,
that
you have to take consequences.
there's even
And the
tabby
consequences
signs
are
in
severe.
the
The kidnappers basically say that they're going to keep
thing
the
with
baby
the tabby
until
signs.
things quiet
Because
down.
like it's
As
the
long
tabby
as this
sign thing is
case
also gray.
continues to get as much attention
So,
as it's getting from the police
it's
and the media and the newspapers, Lindbergh is not getting his son back anytime soon.
Because of that transgression, the kidnappers now have decided that instead of a $50,000 ransom, they want a $70,000
This is
ransom.
so many.
70 grand back then is like $1 million today.
So they don't actually wait until things die down. In fact, the story continues to get bigger and bigger as it goes on. But regardless, within a couple of days, the kidnappers carry on with their plans. In a series of notes that were sent on both March 8th and March 10th, the kidnappers are asking for a volunteer to serve as the go-between for the handoff of the money. Ultimately, they agreed to let a former school principal from the Bronx be that volunteer. His name is Dr. John Condon. So, probably seeking some fame for himself, Condon placed an ad in his local paper offering up a $1,000 reward if the kidnappers were to give up the baby to a priest. Apparently, the kidnappers saw this ad, asked him to be the middleman, and he agreed to do it. And at this point, the police have so few leads that they decide, go with it. Why not? Let's see how this plays out.
With the support of the Lindberghs and police, Condon begins corresponding with the kidnappers.
So over the course of 2 weeks, there's a chain of back and forth. It's like cat and mouse game. Condon would put ads in the local paper, and the kidnappers would respond with their letters. And this back and forth keeps the Lindberghs hopeful that their son is still alive, and a solution will be reached where they'll be able to get him back. They eventually arrange a meeting between Condon and the kidnappers at a cemetery in the Bronx.
According to Condon, at this meeting, he finally learns the kidnappers' identity.
Condon says he meets a man who calls himself John, whom the media and the police will soon dub Cemetery John.
Cemetery John tells Condon he's part of a group of Scandinavian sailors. The baby is being taken care of by these sailors on a boat.
He says the baby is safe and that we need to make an exchange for the ransom money.
This Cemetery John is about 30 to 35 years old, athletic build, 5'9". Based on Condon's description, police prepare a sketch of Cemetery John. He has a light complexion, light hair, pointed chin, and he has a Scandinavian accent. Meanwhile, during the meeting, Condon wisely asks the kidnappers for proof that they have the baby.
On March 16th, Condon receives that proof.
Cemetery John promises to send some evidence. What turns up at Condon's house is a gray sleeping suit that Charles Jr. was sleeping in the night he was taken.
From here, you've got a number of things that are happening in quick succession. There are several more exchanges between Condon and the kidnappers trying to haggle over what the actual ransom should be.
Condon and the kidnappers ultimately agree on the original $50,000 ransom amount.
Police decide to use gold certificates to pay the ransom. This is actually a clever move by the authorities because here's the thing, those gold certificates have the same value as dollars, but for the past 70 years, the United States had tied its currency to what was at the time the gold standard. They were a legal tender of money, but they were a bit more unique. So the idea that the police had was if they pay up the ransom in these certificates, because there's so few of them in circulation now, if they're spent, they're easier to track down. But that whole plan will have to come later. Right now, the Lindberghs only care about getting their baby back, and they firmly believe that tonight is the night that it happens.
On April 2nd, 1932, John Condon goes to do the money exchange to the kidnapper. At the exchange, the kidnapper gives John Condon a letter and then disappears with the money. The letter says that the boy's on a boat called the Nelly. The Nelly is a small boat, about 28 foot. It has 2 women on it who apparently know nothing. They've just simply been hired to watch a baby. And you can find this boat between Horseneck Beach and Gay Head near Elizabeth Island.
When Condon shares this information, police race off to this marina at Martha's Vineyard to find this boat. Because you have to understand, these cops are trying to get there as quickly as possible because think about it. If you're the first police officer to find Charles Lindbergh's kidnapped baby, it's like you're guaranteed to be a hero. Police get to this marina and they search every slip, every boat. Nellie is never found. Baby Lindbergh is never found.
The thing about this Scandinavian gang area and all this, they assume that we're going to get the baby back, and that's how that happened. But this really sets a new tone, I think, in relation to this whole experience, because people now are really more concerned about the
Well, it's not like, oh, you're all that half
With
hour
their
early.
ransom paid, there is no further communication from the alleged
You didn't
kidnapper.
come down and eat until 1
Kidnapper
o'clock.
has the money,
You
but the
need
Lindberghs
support.
do not have the baby.
It's not my fault.
It was like
Okay.
losing Charles Jr. for a second time.
Then on May
Okay, guys, I'm
12th,
back.
the news everyone's feared.
This is about 6
Oh, yeah.
weeks after the ransom drop. A truck driver named Orville Wilson and his assistant William Allen pulled the truck over to the side of the road in Mount Rose, New Jersey, which is a little less than 5 miles away from the Lindbergh
Your
estate.
house.
William Allen was a black man who worked as a trucker. One of the disgusting parts of American history is that he wasn't allowed to use the bathroom wherever he wanted. So he pulled over to use the restroom in the woods. He walked in a ways so as not to be
111.
spotted by anybody passing by. And he noticed something on the ground. At first, he assumes it's a dead animal. But as he gets closer, he realizes it's a small child.
It's obvious that the head has been crushed and animals are starting to scatter the remains. All that is really left
Okay, I really
is a
want
tattered white t-shirt.
to remove.
The men notify police, who bring in the Lindbergh's nursemaid, Betty Gow, to identify the body.
She confirms that the body is of Charles Lindbergh Jr.
A funeral director conducts a rudimentary autopsy and declares that this child died from a blow to the head.
This funeral director establishes that the baby died probably 2 months ago. That timeline means that much of the time that these notes were being exchanged around returning the baby, he was most likely already dead.
Grieving parents Charles and Anne have their son cremated, and the investigation turns from kidnapping to murder.
So naturally, this marks a huge shift for police, because if this child died the very night that he was kidnapped, well, this puts them back at square one. And in this case, square one means that maybe their initial instinct was right all along. Maybe this wasn't an inside job.
In May of 1932, the case of missing infant Charles Lindbergh Jr. turns from kidnapping to murder.
Police are constantly demanding Cemetery John
Oh my
he and a group of
God.
accomplices send ransom demand and eventually collect $50,000. Once they pay the ransom, Cemetery John is gone, and they find the body of Charles Jr. and find out that he apparently died the very night he was taken.
With no new leads, police focus their attention on the Lindbergh's extended family.
The lingering question is why Big Lindbergh was targeted at all, and why on a Tuesday when the Lindberghs were not usually there, and how did the kidnapper know which window to enter? As the investigators work through a long list of Lindbergh family and friends and associates, eventually they find someone whose story doesn't quite add up, and they jump at the chance to label her a suspect.
New Jersey State Police question a domestic worker named Violet Sharp.
Sharp is a 20-something immigrant from England who works for Anne's mother at her house serving her meals, which means that she's working for the baby's grandmother.
So the minute they begin questioning her, Violet becomes very nervous. She doesn't want to answer questions. Sometimes she's a little belligerent. It's obvious to the officers that she is being evasive. But why?
And her story keeps changing. At first she says that she's on a blind date on the night of the kidnapping, but she can't remember the name of her date or the other couple that she's with.
She claims she went to a movie, but she can't remember which one. And later she claims she went to a row house and not a movie at all.
So the police decide that they need to take a closer look at Ms. Sharp. So they ask her for all of her bank statements, all of her financial records to see if there have been any large deposits that have been made. They also ask her to come in and to give an official account of her whereabouts during the date of the kidnapping.
They're pushing me so hard to enter the fence.
Because you can hold inventory for force.
So, the police schedule several interviews with Violet Sharp. And the last one, she just doesn't turn up to.
And they start to think, is she on the run? Did something spook her? Where is she at? Sadly, on June 10th, 1 month after baby Lindbergh's body is discovered, Ms. Sharp's body is also discovered. She had ended up committing suicide by eating silver polish. And ultimately, after her death, investigators are actually able to prove her alibi for the night of March 1st. Turns out, she was on a date, after all.
Eventually, every member of the Lindbergh inner circle is questioned and discarded as a suspect. Everyone that is except for one, Charles Lindbergh himself.
Today, when we have any kind of crime involving a child or family, the family members are the first suspects, especially in kidnapping.
The first person you would look at would be the parents. In 1932, no one is going to question Lindbergh or imagine that the hero of the age could have anything to do with an exploit so sociopathic as the kidnapping of his own son.
Rocks.
One of the things that happens over time is that people thinking about the crime start to notice odd things about Lindbergh's behavior. Theories start to emerge that perhaps Lindbergh is involved in some way.
Lindbergh had tremendous influence over the investigators that were involved in this case. In fact, according to one story, when the police arrived at his home, Lindbergh is standing outside with a rifle, and he tells them, if anyone disobeys me, they're going to get shot.
And the only statement that Lindbergh actually gives is a one-page account where he can't really attest to his own whereabouts the day before the event. Lindbergh has very strong connections to New Jersey State Police, and it's documented that he wanted them to be in charge. Some say that Lindbergh wants to control the investigation.
What
Here's
the?
another curious detail. When the police want to copy down all the serial numbers on those certificates, Lindbergh strongly objects.
Why would Lindbergh want to limit the scope of the search for his son's killer?
People have suggested that it was actually Lindbergh himself who was responsible for the murder of his own son and that prank had gone wrong, and the kidnapping was just a ruse after the fact.
Charles Lindbergh is a practical joker. He likes to pull pranks on people, but it's not funny stuff. It's dangerous stuff. There was a time where he actually put kerosene in an acquaintance's drink and let him drink it, and he thought that was pretty funny. Lindbergh kidnapped his baby once before.
Do not
Just a week
question.
earlier, Lindbergh hid the baby in a closet, and he allowed Betty and Ann to both get hysterical, believing that the baby had been kidnapped, and Lindbergh thought that was funny.
Ann Lindbergh wrote a letter to her mother-in-law the next day explaining what had happened. She said that when she saw the empty crib, her first thought was the child had taken the baby again as a joke.
Theorists suggest that this time, the prank takes an even darker turn.
So the night of the kidnapping, according to the weather report, it was cold and windy.
What if Lindbergh actually was pranking his family again? And what if, during the course of that practical joke, he actually fell
What is
down
it?
the ladder?
All
Or worse,
this
dropped
costs
the baby.
$33.
This will be borne out by the autopsy results. The baby died from a skull fracture.
And Lindbergh immediately ordered that the child's remains be cremated. There were never any toxicological tests done. There was no further examination. He concocted a cover-up of a kidnap story in order to save his own reputation.
But some think it wasn't an accident.
Some people have suggested that Lindbergh took his own child's life on
Keep
purpose.
forgetting that.
As police search for baby Lindbergh's murderer in the summer of 1932,
Meat.
a radical theory suggests Charles Lindbergh is the culprit.
In the 1930s, the pseudoscience of eugenics has taken hold, and Lindbergh is an avid believer.
In eugenics, scientists, what they do is they will deem certain genetic traits superior, and any sort of deformities that show up in somebody are considered a weakness. It's a concept that the Nazi Party would actually use to justify in their genocide against the Jewish people. Lindbergh was definitely drawn to aspects of Nazism. He gave speeches, he published papers, he espoused all of these racist ideas in front of Congress.
Could these controversial political beliefs have led to the death of baby Lindbergh?
Charles Jr. was born with some mild deformities, things like rickets, his legs bowed. He didn't have a whole lot of strength in his lower body. He seemed to be a little slow on development in that area. It didn't seem as though Charles Jr. fit the mold of what Charles Lindbergh was saying was the perfect person.
So people do ask, if Charles Lindbergh was worried that he had an inferior baby, would he be capable of carrying out the horrible act of murdering him?
The idea of Charles Lindbergh doing something so heinous was absolutely inconceivable. Nobody could assign something so evil to such a celebrated man.
Still need to clear those out. I
And that
don't know what
includes
happened yet.
investigators. They stopped looking into the Lindbergh family, and the case
I
goes cold.
said that when I put them in there. And he only took away
In the
half
2
of
years after the Lindbergh baby's death, police questioned nearly
Over
1,000
here.
persons of interest, with no luck. Then, in the summer of 1934,
What?
detectives finally catch the brick they've been looking for. It's all due to a seed they planted at the very beginning.
They put together that $50,000 in ransom money with gold certificates, and they wrote down the serial numbers so they would be easy to locate.
So the more that those are spent, the better the odds that somebody's going to notice.
Months later, they start to surface in New York City.
It takes a while to really figure out exactly where all the bills are being spent, but when they do, they realize that it's along a specific path.
They're being spent along the Lexington Avenue subway. This subway connects the Bronx to the east side of Manhattan.
One turns up at the East River Savings Bank, another at the Lowe's Sheridan Square Theater, another comes from the grocery store in the Yorkville neighborhood, and another at the Exquisite Shoe Store.
Ultimately, $5,100 worth of ransom bills are recovered. But it's one in particular that cracks the case wide open.
September 18th, 1934, one of those gold notes pops up at a bank in Manhattan. But this gold certificate has something different. It has a number written in the margin. For you, 1341 and 1. It's a license plate number.
The bill is traced to a local gas station.
Station attendant Walter Lyle said that that gold certificate caught his attention, and it felt suspicious to him. He thought that that customer might have been a counterfeiter, so to help him remember, he wrote down the license plate right there on the spot.
That's why.
Police run the plate and get a name. For 2 years, police only had a sketch of their prime suspect in the Lindbergh kidnapping. Now, they finally have a name.
The police track down the car, which belongs to one Bruno Richard Hauptmann. The police now believe they know the true identity of Cemetery John.
I don't know what I'm gonna do for this stuff. I just
Hauptmann is a German-born immigrant illegally living in the United States. He was actually charged with multiple burglaries in Germany, but he escaped by stowing away on an ocean liner. He currently lives on East 222nd Street in the Bronx with his wife Anna and their young child, and he works odd jobs as a carpenter. As soon as investigators connect the bill to Hauptmann, they immediately put him under constant surveillance, hoping that he'll slip up and incriminate himself. At some point, Hauptmann realizes that he's being watched. Now, maybe he knows he's guilty, or maybe he's worried about his status in the United States. Either way, he decides to jump in his car and make a break.
And it's a straight-ahead gangster film chase. Riding through the streets, police cars after him, running through traffic. It's something right out of the movie. He's finally pinned in on Park Avenue in the Bronx. Hoffman is arrested, and authorities begin a search of his car and his house. They're searching through all his belongings, not finding much of interest, until they look inside his old garage at the edge of the property.
There, in a stack of old gas cans, police finally find their smoking gun.
They open some jars, and what do they find? $14,600 in gold certificates.
And once they find the cans of ransom money in Huffman's garage, it's a race to the finish to build a case against him, and the evidence is pretty damning.
Detectives checked the serial numbers on every bill found at Hoffman's place, and indeed, these are the certificates that were given as part of the ransom.
In Hoffman's act, there is more evidence.
Remember, the night Charles Jr. goes missing, they find those broken pieces of wood underneath the nursery window that come from a ladder. Well, in Hoffman's attic, they find a ladder.
Not just any ladder, a handmade telescopic ladder designed to collapse in on itself. This allows one person to carry it easily while being long enough to reach the height of Lindbergh's second-story window.
Was it the ladder used
Is
to
it good that
kidnap
bullets
Lindbergh
can't
baby?
hurt you? Because I'd be dead by now.
Hoffman is a carpenter, and so he has his own tools. He has the ability to build a ladder.
And during the attic search, investigators find a section of floorboards that have been cut.
A team of experts study the wood from the floorboards and forensically compare it to the wood from the ladder.
And this gets them thinking. The wood grain in one rail of the ladder, dubbed rail 16, seems to match up perfectly with that cut section from Hoffman's attic floor. And the nail holes also match the nails used to construct the attic. So experts are convinced that the ladder is made from slats in the floor of Hoffman's attic.
But police need more for a conviction.
Of course, owning a ladder isn't a crime, but then investigators find one more clue.
They found a phone number written on the wall in the closet in the kitchen. Whose phone number was it?
Dr. John Condon, the same man who was the intermediary for the ransom handoff. Finally, investigators commissioned handwriting analysis between Hoffman's handwriting and the writing that appeared on the ransom notes, and they find multiple similarities.
Both sets of writing contained backward ends, curls on the Y's. Additionally, he spelled some of the same words wrong.
On September 24th, Hoffman is indicted for extorting the $50,000 ransom from Charles Lindbergh. Shortly after, on October 8th, he's also indicted for the murder of Charles Lindbergh Jr.
Hoffman is represented by Edward J. Riley, an attorney actually hired by the New York Daily Mirror for exclusive rights to Hoffman's story.
The trial brought hundreds of reporters into town. People couldn't find hotel rooms for miles. It was huge.
It shows up on the curtain. I almost got the golden slime. This boy
After conviction
disappeared
and
before I
two
could.
failed appeals,
And
Hoffman
what
is
is this
executed
rock?
by the electric chair on April 3rd, 1936.
And that's it, everyone. Mystery solved. We now know the truth of what happened.
Okay
Or do we?
then. That scared
Even
me.
after the conviction of Richard Hoffman for the murder of baby Lindbergh, not everyone's convinced he's solely responsible.
Obviously, the police want to close this case as neatly and efficiently as possible. And looking at the evidence they have, Hoffman appears extremely guilty.
It seems very likely that he was involved in these crimes.
But even the highest authorities wonder, did he act alone?
Wait a second. How did he still get
During the
out?
execution, the governor of New Jersey himself,
What the heck?
visits him in his cell. He also
in the
brings along
world?
a translator who speaks fluent German.
While there were no notes released from this talk, it seems like it was a pretty influential talk.
After talking with Hoffman, the governor implores court officials and the police to keep on investigating.
He ended up granting him a reprieve.
Governor Hoffman felt that there was more to the story than what the state had put forward at the trial, and he wanted to make sure that everyone who was involved was identified and brought to justice.
As we know, Of course, that request from the governor isn't followed upon, and Hauptmann takes the fall as the one and only perpetrator of that crime. Hauptmann doesn't get any more reprieves, and the execution takes place 4 years after the kidnapping.
For the next 6 decades, Hauptmann's guilt is generally accepted, along with the idea that he acted alone. Then in 2003, a state police archivist makes a startling discovery. Sitting right there in the archive is a board with a signed confession written on it.
It's written in German, but it translates to, I wanted to kidnap a Lindbergh's baby, not Bruno Richard Hauptmann. It goes on to state that some of the ransom money was buried in the town of Summit.
What's more intriguing still is that there's a series of screw holes, like a table leg or a brace, was removed with a large circle around it. And when a comparison is made to the ransom note, these holes line up perfectly with the holes that were found in the ransom notes.
The board was apparently reported to the state police in 1948. A man found it attached to the bottom of the table he had recently purchased.
So authorities did not take this seriously because there have been dozens of confessions. Dozens of people had said that they were involved. In some cases that they were actually the baby.
Handwriting comparisons are made between Hauptmann writing and the writing on the wood. They don't match.
If Hauptmann didn't write it, who did?
In 2012, author Robert Zorn offers a potential lead on who might have written this note.
In his book, Cemetery John, he reports that his father, Eugene, may have witnessed Hauptmann conspiring with 2 other men in 1932. Growing up in the South Bronx, Eugene lived next to a John Knoll. And one day at an amusement park, Eugene claims to have seen John Knoll along with his younger brother Walter and Hauptmann in the amusement park speaking in hushed tones in German, plotting something. He recognized the words Bruno, which was Hauptmann's first name, and the word Englewood, which was the suburb where Lindbergh's family lived in New Jersey.
Zorn puts a few more details together for this story as well. John Knoll was a stamp collector, and the Lindbergh ransom notes use a variety of stamps.
Fighting over that damn
The
bar.
Knoll's residence on the South Bronx was along the same Lexington Avenue subway route on which the gold certificates were spent. If you look at the sketch, Knoll and Cemetery John show a striking resemblance.
Could John Knoll be the real Cemetery John?
While this information is revealing and interesting, at this point it's impossible to prove that John Knoll was Cemetery John. It's possible they sent the wrong man to the electric chair, or there were at least 2 or more accomplices that never got any attention.
For a mystery that's supposedly already solved, there are still a lot of questions that people have that linger about this case.
How could this have succeeded without someone having inside knowledge? What about the inconsistencies at the crime scene?
Why was Dr. Condon so heavily involved? Did he have something to do with this?
What about the death of Violet Sharp? What about John Knoll?
Of course, the biggest question of all, could Lindbergh have possibly orchestrated the whole
What about
thing?
100?
For now, we're left with the official story. At least, until a new clue appears.
As of today, less than $20,000 of the original $50,000 ransom
Oh,
paid
nice.
to Cemetery John has been recovered. If the rest ever turns up, will it tie back to Hauptmann? Or will it point to a new suspect? I'm Lawrence Fishman.
Okay, after
Thank you for
this,
watching History's
I'm
Greatest
gonna
Mysteries.
take all those pink stones out. So collect all these. Get these and run. Put them in here. This wasn't. I'm in the thousands by now. This is a family channel. Excuse you.
Tonight, a series of unexplained deaths near Chicago in 1982 starts a nationwide panic. Victims are connected by one frightening detail.
I am heading the correct way.
It looks like all these people took Tylenol
and died that day.
Sure, I'm
Every
looking at
hospital
it
and every
for
home in America probably had
going
Tylenol in their kit.
Am I?
Now we uncover
Yes.
the top theories surrounding an
Or am
ongoing
I?
FBI investigation.
What if these people
No,
were
I'm not.
Whoever had done it had just been dormant.
Go.
Things to quiet down.
He looks very similar to Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Come on.
Can the elusive killer finally be
Okay,
identified
right over here.
and brought to justice?
It's really a race against time to try and figure out who's doing this and why.
Who actually committed
Right there.
the Chicago Tylenol murders?
No, no. Okay.
September 29th, 1982. At 6:30 a.m. in the Chicago suburb of Schaumburg, 12-year-old Mary Kellerman awakens with a sore throat.
Mary Kellerman wakes up and tells her parents she's
There's
not
that
feeling
one.
well. She has sniffles, she's coughing, and
There
to
you are.
alleviate her symptoms, she takes a Tylenol.
Cool.
Her dad is downstairs and he hears a thud. Runs back upstairs and Mary is sprawled on the bathroom floor. They rush Mary to the hospital. When she finally gets there, Mary was pronounced dead at Alexian Brothers Medical Center in Elk Grove Village.
A few hours later, in nearby Arlington Heights, 27-year-old postal worker Adam Janis collapses after complaining of minor chest pain. He's rushed to Northwest Community Hospital.
Adam arrives in critical condition. And shortly thereafter,
No,
he
you're
dies
not
of what doctors thought was heart failure.
Okay, I got you, folks.
In shock, Adam's brother Stanley and sister-in-law
Sorry, I have
Teresa
to
return
kill
home from the hospital
my son
and take
says.
Tylenol for headaches.
You?
That same day,
Okay.
they also collapse and die.
The police are baffled. We have 3 victims, the same family, in the same house. They initially suspect carbon monoxide poisoning. They called the technicians, but no carbon monoxide was detected. So the police called the public health department looking for some medical guidance. And they send nurse Helen Jensen to the Janis family.
Jensen finds a bottle of extra-strength Tylenol with 6 capsules missing.
3 doses taken from a bottle, 3 people dead. So Jensen takes this bottle back to the medical center to get it tested because she feels that this could be something of importance.
Authorities at Northwest Community Hospital turn it over to law enforcement.
Helen Jensen suspects the Tylenol from the beginning. She actually says this to the investigating officers. I think it's something in the Tylenol.
Oh, I'm sorry,
The
but
Janis
I
family having no idea what
I'm gonna
has
take
killed
you,
3 members
since
of their
I hit
family
you
so
a couple
far.
times.
They're terrified. So they're brought to the hospital, put under observation, and officials went so far as to give them their last rites.
Oops.
Because they didn't know what was killing these people, and they didn't know if they were next.
While the Janis family remains under watch, 18 miles away in the suburb of Winfield, Mary Reiner arrives home. She's recently given birth and wants pain relief.
Soon after taking extra-strength Tylenol, Mary Reiner collapses. She's rushed to the hospital, and she also dies soon thereafter.
5 fatalities, each an apparent mystery. Authorities are confounded.
The Janises and Mary Kellerman all died in Cook County, which meant they all ended up in the same morgue. There were also 2 bottles of Tylenol. The Tylenol bottle that was used by the Janises and the Tylenol bottle that Mary Kellerman got her Tylenol from. Both bottles have the same lot number, which is MC2880. They also have another weird thing in common.
They both had the distinctive smell of bitter almonds, and they're trained professionals who know about poisons and contaminants, and that bitter almond smell could only mean one thing: cyanide.
It's a real mystery. Who would do this? Why did this happen? Why cyanide? Police have tons of questions.
What cyanide does is blocks the cells in your body from absorbing and transporting oxygen. And it does it very quickly. It's a very fast-acting, very dangerous poison.
Tests performed on capsules confirmed
Hey, wait,
the
message from H.
Not only were the Janices and Mary Kellerman
So
killed
apparently her
with
name is
cyanide,
Beatrix.
but it was a dose of
Oh,
about
I'm an idiotic swine since I didn't read this.
to kill a person.
Hobson?
Authorities are panicked because they don't know how far this is going to go. Is it just in Chicago?
Hobson Toileters. That's where we're going to
While
go.
authorities struggle to connect the dots, there's another incident.
At around 3 a.m.
See, I rarely read these.
Working at her telephone company job, not feeling great, so she took a Tylenol. And almost immediately, she passes out and has to be rushed to the
I
hospital.
wonder where they're going to meet this Hobson
After
Toileters.
Mary McFarland collapses, they're looking to see, is this another victim? And sure enough, there are
What do we do?
poison pills in there.
He seems cool.
Just like the others.
That morning, Deputy Medical Examiner Edmund Donahue addresses the public.
Some samples of the capsids, but we have no idea where that occurred.
Donahue hits the airwaves, letting everyone know that if you have Tylenol from this certain lot number, whatever you do not take that Tylenol. Remember, it's 1982. There's no social media. There's 3 networks. To get the word out, police were even going around with loudspeakers, making announcements in the streets to make sure people would not be taking Tylenol from this lot number at this time.
This is a huge deal because Tylenol is probably the #1 pain medicine in the country at the time. Every hospital and every home in America probably had Tylenol in their cabinet.
Johnson & Johnson moved quickly to recall 4.7 million capsules from lot number MC2880. Had all been manufactured in Pennsylvania. At this point, they're treating it like a homicide. They just have no idea how to figure out who's
The next day, authorities form a coordinated multi-agency task force.
Chicago PD is involved, and it ends up being something like 140 law enforcement officials who are involved, including the FBI.
Not only were they investigating multiple homicides, but they were also trying to figure out, are there any more bottles on the shelves out there, which was key.
Before this task force can even mobilize into the streets, there's another incident. In Old Town, Chicago, around 5 p.m. that day, a woman named Paula Prince is found dead on the floor of her home, and there is an open bottle of Tylenol on her bathroom
Absolute idiot right now.
But this bottle is different.
And the bottle is
It was actually
the most
manufactured
obvious
in
spot
Texas.
ever.
And the number on that particular bottle is 1920 MD. Now we have a different lot number that's been tainted with cyanide. And of course now all the red flags go up.
They now know that this isn't contained to a single lot. It is spread. And they don't know how far it might go.
That night, Mayor Jane Byrne orders all Tylenol removed from Chicago shelves.
Oh, they
People,
were
of
right
course,
here.
were panicked. So they were calling up, I just took a Tylenol, am I going to die? Emergency responders on the other end
Is that
would say,
enough
well, if
for
you're
you?
able to call, you're going to be okay, but don't take
Now,
anymore.
The first problem
what is this?
is where do you start?
Bible
Is it just a random lunatic? Is it a
Cool.
serial killer? The obvious
I found permanents
is
yesterday.
to see if maybe it's something that happens in the supply chain.
Yeah, that makes sense. So,
With the Chicago offices
No!
of Johnson & Johnson, police interviewed several current and former Johnson & Johnson employees looking for anyone bearing a grudge.
No.
Johnson & Johnson put out a $100,000 reward and payments that might lead to whoever was doing this. Nothing came of it.
They're also
No!
concerned about if there are other pills.
the darkness falls.
Their interviews with employees don't get them anywhere, so a drastic
Get it to this
step
line.
has to be taken.
Nope.
On October 5th,
No!
Johnson & Johnson recalls all Tylenol products
No!
nationwide. A total of 31 million bottles, valued at
No.
more than $100 million.
They were able to test
If I
them.
collect every
50
single
pills
last one
were
of these, I
contaminated.
will.
Those 50 pills were only in 8 bottles.
No.
2 of the bottles
Bad
had
kid.
been returned in recall. 1 other bottle was found after the fact still on a shelf, but hasn't been sold yet. They're lucky somebody else didn't buy those 3 bottles.
Bad.
They know these tainted pills were only
Bad
produced
kids.
in Pennsylvania or Texas in these 2 lot numbers. One thing they don't find is any evidence of pills that are tainted with cyanide outside the Chicago metro.
No!
And while Johnson & Johnson is testing all of this, they make another huge breakthrough. A chemist at J&J discovers that when you put cyanide inside the Tylenol capsule, it degrades.
No!
Which means these crimes had to happen locally because the amount of time it takes for that pill to dissolve after you put cyanide in it doesn't allow for shipping it out from the factory and waiting until it hits store shelves. You gotta act fast.
At this time, pill bottles didn't have tamper-proof seals on them, so anyone could open a medicine bottle without detection, virtually anywhere.
If it's not an inside job, this case becomes much more difficult. Now they have to canvass the entire Chicago area for any suspect.
Early October 1982. Media coverage of the Chicago Tylenol murders is constant and frenzied.
This is a huge story. Mass hysteria breaks out. It's like the Kennedy assassination in the coverage and the way it just captivates America's attention.
There was somewhere in the area of 100,000 different newspaper articles that were done on this particular case.
The scariest thing is that 7 days have passed, and they still have no viable suspects.
Then on Wednesday, October 6th, investigators finally received what they hoped would be a clue.
A ransom letter arrives at the Johnson & Johnson offices, and this letter claims to be from the person who is poisoning these Tylenol pills. So finally, police have a suspect.
In the letter, the Tylenol killer appears to be bragging about his prowess. It only takes him 10 minutes to contaminate a bottle. He's only spent $50 to kill all of these people. And hey, Johnson & Johnson, if you don't want the killings to continue, you better wire $1 million to this bank account. And don't tell the FBI. And the tone is so creepy. He says, it's so easy to get buyers to swallow the bitter pill. Ugh. Sociopath.
This is not a smart crime. This is a genuine ransom letter. The person who sent it put their actual bank account number in the letter.
The account belongs to a man named Frederick Miller McCabe. Could the Tylenol killer finally have a name?
So investigators follow the trail and speak to Frederick Miller McCabe, and he's an heir to the Miller Brewing
I'm just
fortune.
gonna sit here.
Clearly,
I don't want any of these
the Tylenol killer.
So they analyze this letter, and police find a fingerprint, and it traces back to a man named Robert Richardson. On October 13th, 1982, police issue a warrant for his arrest over extortion charges.
There's a big manhunt looking for this Robert Richardson. They have over 100 law enforcement officers, but at this point, he's in the wind. He's a ghost.
A few days later, the alleged killer makes contact again. A second threatening letter shows up, this time at the White House.
This letter matches the handwriting of the first letter. It also includes a death threat to President Reagan. In the letter, he demands the taxation overhaul, or else the killings will continue.
Within days, a third letter arrives, this time to the Chicago Tribune. But unlike the other letters, this one is an attempt to clear his name.
And he basically identifies himself as James Lewis, sends a thumbprint in, copy of his driver's license, everything's there for law enforcement to identify who he is.
Lewis's thumbprint is a match, and investigators find out that Robert Richardson is an alias.
And he says, I was just being opportunistic. I have nothing to do with this. It was really a crime of opportunity, not a mass murdering, at least as far as he was concerned.
So James Lewis is now at the top of the FBI's most wanted list. They take his photo and they circulate it nationwide. They have a massive manhunt looking for this Lewis.
And they arrest him on December 13th of 1982. So he's in custody at this point.
The next day, his wife Leanne turns herself in to the Chicago police. Her bail is also set at $5 million.
They were probably relieved that they had a really strong suspect in custody. It didn't seem that more people were dying of the same ailments.
Lewis admits to sending ransom letters, but he denies any involvement in the murders. He was simply trying to frame McKay because he felt he was crooked. And he was trying to get the FBI to look at him and hopefully that they would look into any of his financial activities.
Now, Lewis is being interviewed multiple times, and he basically sticks to his story that he didn't have anything to do with the tainting of the pills. We find out that Lewis's wife, who's in custody, worked for McKay. There was a falling out. Apparently, the wife's last check, which was for in the area of $511, bounced. So for $511, this guy goes after this individual, McKay, and basically implicates him in the Tylenol murders.
Is Lewis simply inventing an elaborate defense? Or could his story actually be true?
To defend himself, Richardson/Lewis says, this would be really easy to do. Let me show you how. And he talked them through opening up capsules, replacing the powder inside with cyanide, closing it back up. See, it's so simple. Anyone could do it. Wasn't the smartest move because now police were really feeling comfortable that this was their guy.
And what's crazy about this whole thing is you start looking at Lewis's background, and at one point in time he actually had some involvement in the pharmaceutical industry.
He also had a short-lived business venture where he was importing pill-making machines from India.
Lewis's criminal record also gets investigators' attention.
James Lewis had a troubled past. He had committed assaults as a teenager, chased after his stepfather with an axe, tried to kill himself. He would later say that he did those things to try to get out of the Vietnam War draft, but a lot of people question that.
He also served 2 years for tax fraud, but he was very prolific.
Investigators have all they need to prosecute Lewis for extortion, including a confession. Now they need to prove he's a murderer.
So law enforcement starts to build a timeline of this guy's whereabouts. The months before the poisoning, they find out that this guy is running from law enforcement in Kansas City back in December of 1981.
When he left Kansas City, this is when he started using the alias of Robert Richardson. And his wife also used the same Richardson alias.
James Lewis's main alibi for not committing murders is that he wasn't anywhere near Chicago when the killings occurred. In early September 1992, he and his wife booked cash tickets on Amtrak, left Chicago for New York City using the aliases William and Karen Wagner. They lived there in Manhattan for weeks at the same time these Tylenol killings were happening.
Investigators confirm the couple did indeed rent a New York hotel room, but suspicion remains.
They've got to figure out, okay, he's in New York, could he possibly have come back to Chicago, tainted the pills, and then went back to New York?
The problem is no one can prove that hypothesis because we didn't have the technology back then that we have now. There aren't cameras on every street light.
But there is one camera that might hold the answer. It's now 2.5 months after the Chicago Tylenol murders. Police have a potential suspect, James William Lewis, in custody. But can they prove he's the killer?
Police have James Lewis on extortion. I mean, he's confessed to it. It's a pretty open and closed case. But he is adamant that he had nothing to do with the poisonings, and they cannot place him in Chicago. His alibi is really pretty strong.
Until new evidence surfaces.
When Paula Prince bought her bottle of Tylenol, there actually was surveillance video.
And this is a key part of this investigation because they're able to go back and find that she purchased her Tylenol on September 28th of 1982. And what's interesting here is they actually have security camera video, and it's at the register where she's paying for her Tylenol.
This was huge. There's a gentleman a couple feet behind her who looks an awful lot like James Lewis.
So if he's there during the time that Paula Prince bought her taken bottles, then that's it, right? You think you would have enough to close this case?
Unfortunately, the video isn't clear enough for a positive ID.
Lewis presents himself as an opportunist, as a con man, as a hustler, but he says he's not a killer. That's not in his repertoire.
But when police dig deeper, they discover Lewis isn't quite as innocent as he claims.
As police unfold his background, they find that he actually had been charged with murder before.
In the mid-70s, Lewis was running a little tax and bookkeeping firm with his wife, Deanne, in Kansas City. And one of their favorite clients was an elderly guy named Raymond West.
On July 23rd, 1978, Raymond West disappears. His friend, Charles Banker, goes to Raymond West's house to see how he's doing, see if he's turned up. There is a letter on Raymond's door.
Ray's out of town. For further, call Jim. And it's on the Lewis & Lewis stationery. That's pretty weird, according to his friend. So, Ray doesn't go out of town, certainly not without telling him about it. Banker calls police. When the police come, they enter the house. Police look around the house, they don't see anything strange, so they leave.
3 weeks passed, and Charles Baker came back to Raymond's house.
Mushroom.
On August 14th, 1978. When he opened the door, there was a terrible odor. He went and got the police, who were experienced enough that they knew from the smell what they were dealing with.
So police in the basement, they find a bloody lawn chair, rope, and a garbage bag containing his toupee, eyeglasses, and a blood-stained sheet.
Upstairs, officers notice a stain running from the ceiling to the wall.
In the attic, they find a body with its legs dismembered. There's white rope around the remains, bags covering parts of his body, and the decomposition is tremendous.
They knew it was the work of a killer. They just didn't know why.
As they continue to search to gather more evidence, they find a $5,000 check made out to guess who?
The payee is James Lewis.
So the police ask if they can search his car, and he says sure. In his trunk, they find 20 feet of white rope, trash bags like the ones found in Raymond's house, a briefcase with Raymond West papers, and a stack of Raymond West checks.
In late August 1978, the Jackson County Grand Jury charges James Lewis with capital murder.
Before the case had even started, before any evidence was even presented, his attorney gets the case thrown out on a technicality.
Once they arrested him, they failed to read him his Miranda rights. So every bit of that evidence that they had found would be thrown out. And without it, there was no case. And James Lewis walked out the door.
Despite the lack of a conviction, investigators working the Tylenol case now believe Lewis is capable of murder. But do they have enough evidence to prove it?
So this guy gets off on a murder in 79, and in 1982 they have him for extortion. And the authorities can't connect him to these Tylenol cases because all they have is circumstantial evidence, because his alibi says he was in New York. Can you believe that?
In October of 1983, 1 year after the Tylenol killings, Lewis is tried for extortion and convicted. he serves 13 years of his 20-year sentence.
So after that, he's have another chance to maybe find some closure in the Tylenol case. So they looked for more evidence again. They searched his house in 2009. They confiscated some computers and paperwork that they hoped would point to him as having been the mastermind of this poisoning scheme. In 2010, they got a court order to get DNA from James Lewis and his wife Leanne. Charges never came.
Is Lewis in the Walgreens video behind Paula Prince? And is Lewis the individual that tainted the pills, or is he not?
When the Tylenol murders rocked Chicago in 1982, investigators initially believed it's an isolated event.
Right after I came back.
But as they dig deeper, they
Or no,
unravel
it happened
an
while
unsettling possibility. The killer has been active before. In fact, he could be one of the most infamous criminals in U.S. history. 1 week into the initial investigation, a Chicago detective is dispatched to Sheridan, Wyoming to follow a lead.
On October 9th, 1982, the New York Times released an article that talked about a lead up in Wyoming. There was a very similar homicide that occurred using tainted extra-strength Tylenol with cyanide. So they sent a team of investigators up there to go ahead and look at this particular case.
As it turns out, a couple months before the Chicago murders happened, on July 26th in Sheridan, Wyoming, 19-year-old janitor J. Adam Mitchell is found dead of cyanide poisoning, just like the cases in Chicago.
According to his mom, the only thing he had taken prior was extra-strength Tylenol.
Chicago PD and the FBI couldn't make a direct connection other than circumstantial evidence between the Sheridan, Wyoming poisoning of Mitchell and the Tylenol murders 2 months later in Chicago.
The case kind of goes cold for about 30 years.
Then, a very high-profile suspect is thrust into the spotlight.
On May 19th, 2011, dozens of news agencies pick up on a story about a new suspect. The FBI was seeking DNA from none other than Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
Here's some water.
Kaczynski was a reclusive mathematician, convicted of sending bombs through the mail for nearly 20 years, killing 3 people and wounding 23. He's currently serving 8 life sentences for his crimes in a prison medical facility in North Carolina.
In 1978 through 1980, Ted Kaczynski was living with his parents in Lombard, Illinois, right outside of Chicago. And obviously we have the first 4 attacks that occurred right there in the Chicago metropolitan area. But he also intermittently stayed with his parents after that time frame.
Lombard could also be an ideal home base for the Tylenol killer.
All of the stores where those Tylenol bottles were purchased were all within a 20-mile drive from Kaczynski's parents' home.
And so he would have known these stores, he would have known easily how to get to them, he would have been comfortable in the area. That's something else to think about, poisoning within a particular radius.
When you look at the video of the individual standing behind Paula in Walgreens, not only does he look like Lewis, but he also looks like Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber.
The overlap between what
How did you get out?
and the Tylenol death, people started to wonder, okay, they're both domestic terrorist cases. And actually some of Kaczynski's first terrorist attacks originated in Chicago.
There's also another reason authorities think Kaczynski could be responsible.
You're not the one.
When you look at where Kaczynski was arrested in Montana, and you follow I-90 to go to Chicago, almost in that direct line is Sheridan, Wyoming, which is just off I-90. So here we have another circumstantial connection where Kaczynski could be involved in at least the Sheridan, Wyoming murder and the 1982 Tylenol murders in Chicago.
Could Ted Kaczynski have committed this Sheridan, Wyoming crime as a run-up or practice to his much bigger crimes later.
Ted Kaczynski was a really good planner. He tested stuff out before he actually committed the crime. You know, he tested his bombs out. And could the Sheridan, Wyoming homicide be the precursor to what occurred in Chicago 2 months later in 1982? Could very well occur. That's the way Ted Kaczynski operates.
Kaczynski denies any involvement with the Tylenol case.
Now, Kaczynski claims he never had potassium cyanide in his possession, and they didn't find any in his cabin in Montana. Since 2011, police haven't filed any new charges against Ted Kaczynski. So it's possible that there wasn't a DNA match, but it's possible that they're still building the case.
1 month into the hunt for Chicago's Tylenol killer, investigators ask a new and provocative question.
What if these people weren't killed at random?
Investigators look into the victim's friends and family, searching for any potential motive.
Does someone's husband or wife have a reason to commit murder? Does an employee who is disgruntled with their job have a reason to do this?
Most of the victims don't seem to have any enemies.
But Mary Reiner might have a connection to a possible suspect. His name is Roger Arnold, and he's a self-proclaimed closet chemist. Around the time of the murders, he's heard openly bragging about having access to cyanide.
He's a barfly, so he hangs out at one particular tavern, knows all the bartenders, and he's constantly talking about how easy it is to poison people, and basically goes into detail as to how it could be done.
One of the people listening at the bar thought his theories were a little too close to plausible and called in a tip asking for investigators to look at Arnold.
Things
Things that raised eyebrows about Arnold were he worked in a warehouse for Jewel grocery stores, a place one of the bottles of Tylenol was found. At the warehouse where he worked, he was a colleague with the father of one of the victims. So we have a little bit of a tangential relationship.
Of course I did.
This is the first time
Of course I passed it.
identified a suspect who might have a connection to one of the victims. Did he have some sort of beef with the Reiner family? Was this a revenge killing? It could be. One thing police will tell you all the time is there's no such thing as coincidences.
Officers act on the tip immediately and bring Arnold in for questioning.
There.
At the time, Arnold was out on an assault. So the
Goodnight.
police had good reason to check in on him. They talked about what Arnold thought about the Tylenol killings. And hey guys, did you have anything to do with this? And he said absolutely not. Roger did something. Yeah, I had cyanide, but I got rid of it in August. And the crimes weren't until late September, so according to him, it was all gone by then.
This is all circumstantial, but it's very alarming. We have a suspect who fancies himself as a closet chemist, and he has a connection to one of the victims, and he worked in the perfect spot to pull off a crime like this. And he admits to handling and having cyanide.
It's enough to get a search warrant for Arnold's apartment.
They found
I'm waiting
chemicals,
to the air.
weapons, how-to guides for various criminal activities.
And they also find 2 one-way tickets to Thailand. They find 5 unregistered guns.
Hey,
Yeah.
your mother's trying to talk to you.
Okay.
They find potassium carbonate, which is not the same as potassium cyanide,
Okay.
but if you modify
Just need
it a
to
little
finish
bit,
doing
it
something
can
in
be
my
deadly.
game.
You can make a synthetic version using other ingredients. Arnold doesn't help himself either because he won't tell police why he has this potassium carbonate in his possession. He just says it wasn't illegal. Don't worry about it.
Investigators next ask Arnold to take a polygraph exam.
Obviously, he refuses. So he ends up charged with the assault and weapons violence. While he's awaiting trial on those charges, he's released on a $6,000 bond.
Sorry if it's getting longer.
He's very angry.
When he was being
It was
interviewed by
already
law
been 2
enforcement,
hours.
he made a
But,
very interesting point
yeah.
that I'd like to be in on the
Hope you guys
homicide
enjoyed.
of the guy that turned me
That's
in.
Sun Simulator.
In the early morning of June 18, 1983, Arnold snaps.
Roger Arnold becomes convinced
So yeah.
that the
Hope you guys
bar owner,
enjoyed.
Marty Sinclair, is the guy